How did your mom ruin the best night of your life? Wyatt finally asked me to prom after 3 months of flirting in calculus class, and I thought I was going to pass out. He was perfect, and I'd been hoping he'd ask since February. The week before prom, my mom offered to take my dress to get it professionally steamed, and I immediately panicked because she had a habit of losing things or forgetting about them. Mom, are you sure? I can just do it myself. She insisted and promised she'd pick it up the day before prom. I spent the entire week anxious that something would go wrong, but when she brought it back, the dress looked absolutely perfect. The day of prom, I got ready for hours with my hair and makeup, and when I came downstairs in my blue dress, my dad actually teared up. My parents took a million pictures before Wyatt arrived. When he showed up in his suit looking incredible, my mom gave him a big hug. You must be Wyatt. I know your dad from PTA. Wyatt smiled and said, Yeah, he mentioned meeting you at the last meeting. We posed for more pictures and then finally escaped to his car. You look amazing, he said as we drove to the restaurant. I can't believe I'm actually here with you right now. Dinner was incredible and we couldn't stop talking. Wyatt told me he wanted to study engineering and build sustainable housing. That's so specific, I said. He grinned. I know exactly what I want to do with my life. What about you? I told him I wanted to go to medical school and maybe become a pediatric surgeon. His eyes lit up. That's incredible. You'd be amazing at that. We talked about our families and he told me about his little sister. I told him about my older brother who was already in college. Do you know where you're going to school yet? He asked. I told him state and his whole face lit up. Wait, seriously? I'm going to state too for their engineering program. We spent the rest of dinner talking about how we could hang out on campus and maybe even live in the same dorm area. When we got to prom, the gym looked like something out of a movie with lights and flowers and a massive disco ball. This is perfect, Wyatt said, taking my hand. You're perfect. We started dancing immediately, and he was actually a really good dancer, which surprised me. My mom made me take ballroom lessons when I was younger, he admitted, laughing. I hated it then, but I'm glad I know what I'm doing now. We danced to every single song, and he introduced me to all his basketball friends. During a slow song, he pulled me close and said, I've been thinking about this moment for months. Just being here with you. I told him I'd been thinking about it too. My phone buzzed in my purse, and when I saw it was my mom calling, my stomach dropped because I thought something terrible had happened. I stepped away to answer. Hi, sweetie, just checking that you're having a good time. I won't bother you again, I promise. Have fun. I went back to Wyatt, relieved that it wasn't an emergency. My best friend grabbed me later when Wyatt went to get us drinks. He's been telling everyone how much he likes you, she whispered. Like, he's really into you. When Wyatt came back, he asked if I wanted to get some air. We walked outside to the courtyard and sat on a bench under the string lights. I need to tell you something, he said, and my heart started racing. I know we've only been on like one official date, but I really like you. Like, a lot. And I was hoping maybe we could make this official, like, actually date over the summer and into college. I felt like I was going to cry from happiness. Yes, definitely yes. He smiled so wide and held my hand. I was so nervous you were going to say no. I've been planning what to say for like a week. We went back inside and danced for another hour straight. He kept his arms around me and kept whispering funny things in my ear that made me laugh. At one point he said, I feel like I've known you forever. Like we just fit, you know? I knew exactly what he meant because I felt the same way. During another slow song, he looked right at me and said, I think this is the best night of my life. I told him it was mine too and meant every word. We were swaying to the music when I heard someone gasp loudly near the entrance. I looked over and my mom was walking into the prom in her jeans and sweater with a man I recognized as Wyatt's dad right behind her. Everyone stopped dancing and turned to stare. Why is my dad here? Wyatt said, his voice confused. Why is your mom with him? My mom walked straight toward us through the crowd of people pulling out their phones. She had tears running down her face. Sweetie, I'm so sorry to do this here, but I couldn't wait anymore, she said, her voice shaking. I'm leaving your father tonight. Wyatt's dad and I have been seeing each other for months and we can't hide it anymore. We're running away together and getting married tonight. I looked at Wyatt and saw the horror on his face that matched exactly what I was feeling, because we both realized at the same time that we were about to be step-siblings. My feet won't move, and I can feel Wyatt's hand slip away from my waist as we both stand there staring at our parents who are actually holding hands, like this is some kind of romantic moment instead of a complete nightmare. The music cuts off and the silence is so loud I can hear my own breathing, and then someone near the punch table whispers something that sounds like shock mixed with laughter. I turn my head and see at least 50 phones already pointed at us with little red recording lights blinking, and my stomach twists so hard I think I might actually throw up right here on the gym floor. Wyatt takes a step toward his dad, and his voice comes out all wrong when he asks what's happening and why they're here. My mom is crying, but she's also smiling like she expects us to hug her and tell her we're happy for her, and my whole body starts shaking. So bad I have to lock my knees to stay standing. Jasmine appears next to me out of nowhere and grabs my arm asking if I'm okay. But I can't make words come out because my throat feels like someone is choking me, and all I can think is that 300 people are watching this happen and recording every second of it. The principal rushes over in his suit looking panicked and starts trying to move my mom. And Wyatt's dad toward the hallway while making hand signals at the DJ, who fumbles with his equipment and starts playing music again, but it's too late because everyone saw everything. People start swaying like they're dancing, but nobody is actually dancing because they're all still staring at us. And I can see phones everywhere pointing in our direction, and I know this is going to be all over social media before we even leave this building. Wyatt looks at me and his face is so full of horror that it makes my chest hurt, and he says he didn't know about any of this, and he swears he had no idea. I believe him because he looks as destroyed as I feel, but it doesn't matter because our parents just ruined everything in front of everyone we know. I grab my purse from the table where we left it and start running toward the exit without thinking about anything except getting out of here right now. Jasmine calls my name and I hear her heels clicking on the floor behind me as she chases after me. Wyatt yells my name too, but I can't turn around and look at him because the boy I was falling for just became my future stepbrother, and I can't process that while standing in front of 300 witnesses. I make it through the gym doors and into the hallway, and then outside into the parking lot, before the tears finally start, and then I can't stop them. Jasmine catches up and wraps her arms around me, and I sob into her shoulder so hard I can barely breathe, and she just holds me and doesn't say anything because what is there to say? She guides me to her car and opens the passenger door and helps me get in because my hands are shaking too much to work the handle. She drives me home and neither of us talks, and my phone keeps buzzing in my purse over and over again. I finally pull it out and see 17 texts and notifications from Instagram and Snapchat, and when I open them I see the video is already in our school's group chats. Someone posted it with the caption about drama at prom, and there are already 200 comments. And half of them are people saying they feel bad for me, and the other half are making jokes about how this is better than any TV show they've ever watched. When we pull up to my house, all the lights are on even though it's almost midnight, and my dad's car is in the driveway, which is weird because I thought he'd be asleep. Jasmine asks if she should come inside, but I tell her I need to do this alone and thank her for driving me. I walk up to the front door and let myself in and find my dad sitting at the kitchen table staring at his phone with tears running down his face, and it breaks something inside me to see him like this. He looks up when I walk in and tries to wipe his eyes, but more tears just come, and I sit down next to him without saying anything. He shows me his phone, and there's a text from my mom from an hour ago saying she was leaving him, and not to wait up and that she'd explain everything later. He tells me he had no idea about the affair, or that she was planning to announce it at my prom in front of the whole school, and his voice cracks on the last word. I start crying again, and he puts his arm around me, and we just sit there crying together because our family just exploded in the most public way possible, and neither of us saw it coming. I go up to my room eventually, but I can't sleep, because every time I close my eyes, I see everyone staring at us, and hear that gasp from the crowd. I keep checking my phone and watching the video spread beyond our school to other districts, and then someone makes it into a meme with text that says worst prom ever, and it has thousands of shares by 2 a.m. Wyatt texts me 3 times saying we need to talk, but I don't know what to say, because what is there to talk about when our parents just destroyed everything? I finally fall asleep around 4 and wake up 3 hours later when I hear the doorbell ring. I hear my dad answer it and then male voices, and I recognize Wyatt's voice asking to talk to me. I get out of bed and go downstairs and see my dad standing in the doorway with his arms crossed and his face all hard looking at Wyatt, who looks like he didn't sleep at all. Wyatt asks for just 5 minutes to explain, and my dad looks at me and I nod, so we go sit on the porch steps. Wyatt tells me his dad woke him up this morning and told him about the affair and said they're getting married next month whether we like it or not. His hands are shaking when he talks, and he keeps looking down at the ground instead of at me. He says he really liked me and was falling for me, and now this whole thing is ruined and his voice breaks on the last word. I tell him I felt the same way, but it doesn't matter anymore because our parents destroyed any chance we had at being together. We sit there in silence for a while, and then he asks if we can still be friends. And I honestly don't know how to answer that question, because how are we supposed to be friends when we were supposed to be something more, and now we're going to be step-siblings instead? Wyatt stands up from the porch steps and walks back to his car without saying anything else, and I watch him drive away before going inside. My dad is still at the kitchen table, and I sit with him for a while, but neither of us knows what to say, so eventually I go upstairs and lock myself in my room. I spend the rest of Saturday deleting notifications on my phone and ignoring texts from people at the school who suddenly want to know all the details. Sunday morning drags by with my dad making pancakes that neither of us can eat, and around 2 p.m. I hear a car pull into the driveway. I look out my window and see my mom getting out of an unfamiliar sedan, and my whole body tenses up. She walks in through the front door like she still lives here, and I hear her calling out that she's home. I come downstairs and find her in the kitchen putting groceries away and acting like absolutely nothing is wrong. She turns around when she sees me and smiles like this is just a normal Sunday afternoon. She starts talking about how she stayed at Wyatt's dad's house and they're so happy together, and she really hopes we can all be one big family soon. Something inside me just snaps, and I start screaming at her about how she walked into my prom in front of everyone and destroyed everything. My voice gets louder with every word, and I'm telling her she humiliated me and ruined my relationship with Wyatt before it even had a chance to start. She actually rolls her eyes and waves her hand at me dismissively. She says I'm being dramatic and I'll get over my little crush and find someone else at college. I feel like I might actually lose my mind, because she's calling this a little crush when I was falling in love with him. I tell her this wasn't just some stupid crush, and she ruined the best night of my life by making it all about her selfish choices. My dad comes downstairs and his face is red and he points at the door and tells her to get out of his house right now. She tries to argue and says she has a right to be here, but he starts yelling that she gave up that right when she decided to announce her affair at our daughter's prom. The fight that follows is so loud I'm sure the neighbors 3 houses down can hear every word. She's screaming about how she deserves to be happy, and he's yelling back about betrayal and humiliation, and I'm standing there watching my family completely fall apart. She finally grabs her purse and storms out and slams the door so hard a picture falls off the wall. My dad sits down on the couch and puts his head in his hands, and I sit next to him, and we don't talk for a long time. That night my phone rings and I see it's my older brother calling from college. He says he saw the video that someone posted online and he's absolutely furious with our mom. His voice is shaking when he talks, and he keeps saying he can't believe she would do something so cruel and selfish. He tells me he's driving home next weekend to help Dad start figuring out divorce stuff, and he asks how I'm holding up. I tell him I'm not okay, and he says that's completely valid, and anyone would be a mess after what happened. He tells me if I need to get away from all this, I can come stay with him at his apartment near campus for a while, and I tell him I'm seriously thinking about it. Monday morning arrives way too fast, and I consider faking sick, but I know I have to face school eventually. The second I walk through the front doors, people start staring and whispering, and I feel like I'm going to throw up. People I barely know come up to me asking if I'm okay, or wanting to know what happened after the video cuts off. Someone asks if my mom and Wyatt's dad really got married that night, and I just walk past them without answering. In calculus class, I have to sit 3 rows away from Wyatt, and we both stare at our desks the entire period. I can feel him looking at me a few times, but I keep my eyes down on my notebook. At lunch, Jasmine and Ariel sit on either side of me and form this protective wall when people try to come over. Ariel tells someone who asks about prom to mind their own business, and Jasmine literally stands up when another person approaches with their phone out. Ariel tells me later that her parents got divorced when she was in middle school, and if I need any advice about dealing with family drama, she's been through it. It helps to have friends who aren't treating this whole thing like it's some entertaining drama, but I still feel like everyone in the cafeteria is staring at me constantly. After lunch, the school counselor, Ramona Carr, calls me down to her office over the intercom. She's sitting behind her desk when I walk in, and she gestures for me to sit down and says she's here if I need to talk about anything. I end up telling her the whole story about how Wyatt and I had been building this connection for months, and I was really falling for him, and now we can't even be friends because our parents are getting married. She listens without interrupting or judging, and when I finish, she says what I'm feeling is completely valid, and this situation isn't fair to either me or Wyatt. She gives me her direct email and says I can reach out anytime I need support. After school, I'm walking to my car when Nolan catches up with me. He's Wyatt's best friend from the basketball team, and he looks uncomfortable but determined. He tells me Wyatt is really messed up about everything that happened and has barely left his room all weekend. Then he says something that makes my stomach drop because he tells me Wyatt's been talking about maybe not going to state anymore so we don't have to see each other on campus. I feel this wave of guilt even though I know none of this is my fault, and now Wyatt might give up his dream school and his engineering program because of what our parents did. That evening, my dad tells me he met with a divorce lawyer during his lunch break. The lawyer apparently said my mom's public announcement at prom actually helps his case because it shows poor judgment and gives him leverage. The lawyer explained that the affair combined with the humiliating way she revealed it will likely result in a favorable settlement for my dad. It feels weird to be relieved about divorce proceedings, but at least something might work out in our favor. The next few days, my mom keeps texting me asking to meet for lunch so we can talk about the new family dynamic. Every message makes me want to throw my phone across the room, so I just ignore all of them. On Thursday, during my free period, I'm in the library studying when the principal comes over and quietly asks me to come with him. We walk to the front office, and I see my mom standing there saying she has a right to see her daughter. The principal very calmly tells her she needs to leave campus, and she can't show up during school hours without permission. She starts arguing and making a scene, and he actually has to escort her out to the parking lot, while she's yelling about how I'm her daughter, and I'm being manipulated by my father. 2 weeks after prom, I'm still getting comments and messages on social media about the video. Someone created a TikTok duet where they added music and commentary making fun of the whole situation, and it went semi-viral in our area. I see people from other schools sharing it and leaving comments about how crazy the whole thing is. I finally just delete Instagram and TikTok and make my other accounts private because I can't deal with random strangers treating the worst moment of my life like it's entertainment for them to laugh at. A week passes before I see Wyatt again outside of class. I'm in the library during my free period trying to finish a history project when he walks in carrying his backpack and laptop. He looks around like he's searching for an empty table, and when his eyes land on me, he stops. For a second, I think he's going to turn around and leave, but instead he walks over and sets his stuff down across from me. We work in silence for maybe 15 minutes before he closes his laptop and looks directly at me. He tells me he's sorry this happened to us and his voice is quiet enough that nobody else can hear. I put down my pen and tell him I'm sorry too because I don't know what else to say. He nods and says he knows we can't be together now, but it doesn't make it hurt any less. I agree, and we sit there for another minute before he opens his laptop again and goes back to work. The conversation is short, but it feels important somehow, like we both needed to say those words out loud. When the bell rings, we pack up our stuff and walk separate directions down the hallway. That night, my phone buzzes with a text from my mom saying she and Wyatt's dad are getting married at the courthouse in 3 weeks. She sends a follow-up message asking if I'll come to support her on her special day. I show the text to my dad, and he tells me I don't have to go if I don't want to. He says he certainly won't be attending, and I shouldn't feel pressured to be there either. I text my mom back saying I'm not coming to watch her marry the man who helped destroy our family. She responds with 3 crying emojis and a message about how I'm being unfair, and she deserves happiness too. I turn off my phone and throw it on my bed because I can't deal with her guilt trips right now. The next day, Ariel asks me to come over for dinner at her house. Her mom makes pasta, and we sit around their kitchen table talking about school and colleges. After dinner, Ariel's mom asks how I'm doing with everything that happened at prom. I tell her it's been really hard, and my mom keeps trying to force this new family situation on me. Ariel's mom nods and says she went through a messy divorce 5 years ago, so she understands complicated family stuff. She tells me it's okay to set boundaries with my mom, and I shouldn't feel guilty for being angry about what happened. She explains that the adults made these choices, and I'm allowed to protect myself emotionally, even if my mom doesn't like it. Her advice feels more helpful than anything anyone else has said, because she's actually been through something similar. When I leave that night, I feel a little bit better about standing my ground with my mom. Graduation practice is the following week, and I'm standing in line with my class when I catch Wyatt looking at me from across the gym. When our eyes meet, there's this moment of shared sadness that makes my chest hurt. After practice ends, he walks over and asks if we can talk privately. We end up sitting in his car in the parking lot with the windows down because it's hot outside. He tells me he still thinks about what could have been between us all the time. I admit I do too, but we both know it's impossible now that our parents are getting married. He asks if I ever wonder what would have happened if his dad and my mom had just kept their affair secret. I tell him I try not to think about alternate versions of events because it just makes everything worse. We sit in silence for a few minutes before I say I should probably get home. He nods and I get out of the car and walk to mine without looking back. 2 days later, my mom shows up at the house with Wyatt's dad to discuss living arrangements after the wedding. My dad answers the door and I can see his jaw clench when he sees them standing there together. They come inside and sit on the couch while I stay standing near the stairs. Wyatt's dad starts talking about how his house is bigger and has more space for everyone. My mom jumps in saying it would be nice if we could all live together as one family. They both look at me expectantly like I'm supposed to agree with this crazy plan. I stare at them without saying anything until my dad firmly tells them I'll be staying with him in our house until I leave for college. My mom starts to argue, but my dad cuts her off and says the conversation is over. They leave looking upset, and my dad tells me I never have to live with them if I don't want to. The last few weeks of school are exhausting because I see Wyatt every single day, and we can never be together. We've developed this careful dance of being polite but keeping our distance. We say hi in the hallways and sometimes make small talk before class, but we never hang out or text anymore. It feels like we're both sad about something that never got a chance to exist. During lunch one day, Nolan sits down next to me and says Wyatt talks about me sometimes. He tells me Wyatt wishes things were different and misses being able to just talk to me like we used to in calculus class. I don't know what to do with that information, so I just thank Nolan for telling me and change the subject. My mom gets married at the courthouse on a Thursday afternoon. She posts photos on Facebook that same evening, showing her and Wyatt's dad holding hands on the courthouse steps. The caption says something about true love finding a way and new beginnings. The comments are mostly from people who don't know what she did at my prom. I want to comment and tell everyone the truth about how she announced her affair in front of my entire senior class, but my dad says it's not worth engaging with her online. My brother calls me that night to check in and says he's proud of how I'm handling this impossible situation. He tells me I'm stronger than he would be if he were in my position. 3 days after the wedding, my mom texts asking me to come to a family dinner at her new house. I tell my dad I don't want to go, but he says I should try once to see if we can find some way to coexist. I agree to go for one dinner and immediately regret it. Wyatt is already there when I arrive and we barely make eye contact. We sit at opposite ends of the table while our parents act like everything is perfectly normal. They talk about their honeymoon plans and ask us about college preparations. Wyatt and I give short answers and avoid looking at each other. The whole dinner lasts 2 hours and feels like the most awkward experience of my entire life. When it's finally over, I practically run to my car. I'm driving home when my phone buzzes with a text from Wyatt saying that was awful, and he's sorry they're forcing this family dinner thing on us. I text back agreeing it was terrible. We end up texting back and forth for over an hour about how crazy it is that our parents expect us to just accept this new situation. He tells me he feels like he's living in some weird alternate reality where nothing makes sense anymore. I say I feel exactly the same way. It feels good to talk to him, but it also makes everything more complicated because I remember why I liked him so much in the first place. His texts make me laugh, and he understands what I'm going through better than anyone else. Eventually, we both say goodnight, but I lie awake for a long time thinking about our conversation. The next week, Ramona Carr calls me into her office again and asks how I'm doing. I tell her about the family dinner disaster and how weird it was to sit there with Wyatt while our parents pretended everything was fine. She listens carefully and then suggests I might benefit from seeing a therapist outside of school who works with teenagers dealing with family changes and loss. I'm not sure about the idea at first because I've never been to therapy before. She explains that what I'm going through is a type of grief, and it's completely okay to need professional help processing these feelings. She gives me a list of 3 therapists who take my dad's insurance and tells me to think about it. I fold the paper and put it in my backpack, telling her I'll talk to my dad about it. That night, my dad sits with me at the kitchen table and we look over the therapist list together. He tells me he thinks it's a good idea and says his insurance will cover most of the cost. I pick the one whose office is closest to our house, and my dad calls the next morning to set up an appointment for the following week. 2 days later, my mom starts texting me constantly about coming over to her new place for dinner. She sends photos of the guest room she decorated for me with new bedding and curtains. She says Wyatt has his own room there too, and we can all hang out as a family on weekends. I ignore the first 3 messages, but she keeps sending more. Finally, I text back that I need space and I'm not ready to play house with her and Wyatt's dad. She calls me immediately and I answer because I know she won't stop until I do. She tells me I'm being stubborn and immature. She says she deserves to be happy and I should support her new marriage. I tell her I can't just forget what she did at prom and pretend everything is fine. She starts crying and says I'm choosing my dad over her and refusing to accept her happiness. I hang up before I say something I'll regret. The next day at the school, I'm exhausted because I barely slept. Finals are starting in a week, and I haven't studied nearly enough because my brain won't focus on anything except family drama. Every time I try to read my textbooks, the words blur together, and I end up staring at the same page for 20 minutes. Ariel notices me zoning out in chemistry lab and asks if I'm okay. I tell her about final stress, and she offers to help me make a study schedule. We meet at the library after school, and she pulls out her planner. She blocks out time for each subject and builds in breaks so I don't burn out. She makes me promise to actually follow the schedule and texts me every night to check that I studied. It helps having someone keep me accountable when all I want to do is give up. 3 days before the first final, I end up in a calculus study group that Wyatt is also part of. We haven't talked much since that parking lot conversation weeks ago. The study group meets in the library, and there are 6 of us working through practice problems. Wyatt sits across the table from me, and we're both careful not to make too much eye contact. When someone asks him to explain a problem, he's good at teaching, and I remember why I liked him so much in the first place. We work together on a particularly hard equation, and our hands almost touch when we both reach for the same pencil. He pulls back quickly and apologizes. The whole session is this weird mix of working well together academically while maintaining careful emotional distance. After 2 hours, everyone packs up and leaves. Wyatt and I walk out at the same time, and he asks how I'm doing. I tell him I'm surviving, and he nods like he understands exactly what I mean. The next day, I'm in the bathroom between classes when I hear 2 girls come in talking. I'm washing my hands and about to leave when I hear one of them say Wyatt's name. I freeze and listen, even though I know I shouldn't. One girl says she asked him to go to a movie last weekend and he turned her down. The other girl says he hasn't dated anyone since prom, and everyone thinks he's still hung up on me. The first girl responds that it's so tragic because we were perfect together, and the whole situation with our parents is like something from a soap opera. I back into one of the stalls and lock the door. My eyes start burning, and I press my hand over my mouth to stay quiet. They keep talking about how romantic it would be if we found a way to be together despite everything. Finally, they leave, and I sit on the toilet lid crying as quietly as possible. Someone else comes in, and I hold my breath until they leave too. The reminder that other people saw what Wyatt and I could have been makes everything hurt worse. I skip next period and hide in the library until I can pull myself together enough to go to class. That afternoon, my dad picks me up and tells me graduation is in 2 weeks. He asks if I've thought about what I want to do about my mom being there. I tell him I've been trying not to think about it at all. He says my mom texted him asking about taking family photos after the ceremony with her new husband. My dad's face gets hard when he says this, and he tells me he already said no on my behalf. He promises he'll run interference and make sure I don't have to pose for fake happy family pictures. He also tells me my brother is driving home for graduation and will help keep mom at a distance if she tries to corner me. I feel relieved knowing I'll have backup. 2 days later, I'm leaving school and heading to my car when I see Wyatt leaning against his truck in the parking lot. He waves me over and I walk across the lot wondering what he wants to talk about. He looks nervous and tired and asks if we can talk for a minute. I lean against the truck next to him and wait. He tells me he's been thinking about maybe not going to state after all. My stomach drops and I ask him what he means. He explains that being on the same campus knowing we can't be together might be harder than just going somewhere else entirely. He's been looking at other engineering programs and found a few good options in different states. I tell him that's not fair, and he shouldn't have to give up state because of what our parents did. He says he doesn't know if he can handle seeing me around campus and not being able to talk to me the way he wants to. I tell him I don't want him to throw away his plans because of this impossible situation. We stand there in silence for a while and finally he says he'll think about it more. The next week, I have my first appointment with the therapist my dad found. Her office is in a small building near the hospital, and the waiting room has comfortable chairs and magazines. She calls me back and her office has big windows and plants everywhere. She asks me to tell her what's been going on, and I end up talking for almost the full hour. I tell her about prom and the family dinner, and how I can't stop thinking about Wyatt even though I know it's pointless. She listens without judging and takes notes occasionally. She tells me what I'm experiencing is a complicated kind of grief, because I'm mourning both my family as I knew it, and the relationship with Wyatt that never got to happen. She says it's completely normal to be angry at my mom, and forgiveness doesn't have to come quickly or easily. She also says the feelings I have for Wyatt are real and valid even though the situation makes them impossible to act on. Hearing her say that makes me feel less crazy for still caring about him. She gives me some techniques for managing anxiety, and we schedule another appointment for next week. On my way out of school 2 days later, my mom is waiting by the pickup area. I see her car and try to walk the other direction, but she gets out and calls my name. Other students are staring as she walks toward me. She tells me she's hurt that I'm choosing my dad over her and refusing to give her new marriage a chance. I tell her I'm not choosing sides, but I am choosing to protect myself from her poor decisions and public embarrassment. She starts crying right there in front of everyone. She says she thought I'd be happy she found love and wants us to be a real family. I remind her that her happiness came at the cost of my family and my relationship with Wyatt. She reaches for my arm, but I step back. I tell her I need space and she needs to respect that. She's still crying when I walk away and get in my dad's car. He doesn't ask what happened because he can probably guess. The next morning, Nolan finds me at my locker before first period. He tells me Wyatt decided to stick with state after all. I feel relieved, but Nolan keeps talking. He says Wyatt is requesting a dorm on the opposite side of campus from where I'll be living. He's also planning to join clubs and activities that won't overlap with mine, so we can both have our college experience without running into each other constantly. Nolan says Wyatt spent hours mapping out how to avoid me while still going to the same school. It's practical and makes sense, but it also makes me incredibly sad. We're going to spend the next 4 years planning our lives around not seeing each other. I thank Nolan for telling me, and he gives me this sympathetic look before walking away. A week before graduation, my mom calls and asks me to meet her at a coffee shop. I almost say no, but my therapist has been encouraging me to try small interactions if I feel ready. I agree to meet for 30 minutes. When I get there, my mom is already sitting at a table with 2 drinks. She looks nervous and excited at the same time. She tells me she has news and she's been waiting to share it in person. My whole body tenses because I know whatever she's about to say is going to make everything more complicated. She tells me she's pregnant. She's smiling like this is the best news in the world. She talks about how excited she and Wyatt's dad are about having a baby together. She asks if I'm excited about being a big sister. All I can think about is how this makes the situation even more permanent. This isn't just a marriage that might not work out. Now there's going to be a baby tying our families together forever. I tell her congratulations and leave after exactly 30 minutes like I promised myself. In my car, I sit with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. My phone buzzes with a text from Wyatt that just says, "Did you hear?" I text back, "Yeah." And he responds, "This is permanent now." I send back, "I know," and we both understand that our parents aren't going anywhere, and we're stuck in this weird family dynamic forever. Graduation day finally arrives, and I wake up feeling strange. This should be one of the best days of my life, but instead I'm dreading it. My dad makes my favorite breakfast, and my brother got in late last night, so he's there too. They both tell me they're proud of me, and we take photos in the backyard. Jasmine texts that she'll save me a seat at the ceremony. When we get to the school, the parking lot is packed with families. I can see my mom and Wyatt's dad getting out of their car on the other side. My dad, brother, and Jasmine form a protective circle around me as we walk to where the graduates are supposed to line up. My mom tries to come over, but my brother steps in front of me and tells her this isn't the time. During the ceremony, I can see my mom and Wyatt's dad sitting together on the opposite side of the auditorium. They're taking photos and holding hands and acting like proud parents. My dad sits with my brother and some of our extended family. When they call my name, I walk across that stage thinking about how different I imagined this day would be back when Wyatt first asked me to prom. I thought we'd be celebrating together and taking couple photos and planning our summer before college. Instead, I'm walking across this stage alone while our parents sit on opposite sides pretending their choices didn't destroy what we could have been. That night, the graduation parties start, and I end up at 3 different houses with Jasmine and Ariel. At the second party, I spot Wyatt across the backyard talking to Nolan and some other basketball guys. Our eyes meet for just a second, and he gives me this small, sad smile that I return before looking away. My phone buzzes around 11 with a text from him saying congratulations on the valedictorian speech and that I did amazing up there. I text back thanking him and telling him his salutatorian speech was really good too. We don't say anything else, but I stare at those messages for way too long, thinking about how we should be celebrating together, instead of texting from different parties. Jasmine notices me looking at my phone and squeezes my shoulder without saying anything because she knows exactly what I'm thinking. 3 days later, my mom texts asking if I'll come to a family celebration dinner for both graduations at her new house. I almost delete the message, but then I remember what Ramona told me in our last session about trying small steps toward coexisting, even if I'm not ready for full forgiveness. I text back saying I'll come for an hour, and she sends back 3 heart emojis like we're suddenly best friends again. When I tell my dad about it, he asks if I'm sure I'm ready, and I tell him I need to at least try, because avoiding her forever isn't realistic. The dinner ends up being me, my dad's brother, Wyatt, his little sister, my mom, and Wyatt's dad, all sitting around this big dining room table trying to pretend everything is normal. Wyatt and I end up talking about our class schedules for first semester and what dorms we got assigned to. He tells me he's taking Intro to Engineering and Calculus too, and I tell him about my biology and chemistry classes. It's weird how easy it is to talk about college stuff because it's safe territory that has nothing to do with our parents. During dessert, Wyatt's dad stands up with his wine glass and starts making this toast about bringing our families together and building something beautiful from new beginnings. I watch Wyatt's face and see him wince when his dad says the word family. My mom is crying happy tears and holding Wyatt's dad's hand, and I focus on my cake instead of looking at them. After dinner, Wyatt follows me outside when I tell everyone I need to leave. We walk to my car in silence, and when we get there, he turns to me and says, "Thanks for trying tonight," because he knows it's weird for me too. I tell him we're both doing our best in an impossible situation, and he reaches out and squeezes my hand for maybe 2 seconds before letting go. Neither of us says anything else, but that hand squeeze somehow means more than any conversation we could have. The next 2 months drag by with occasional forced family gatherings that get slightly less painful each time. My mom's stomach starts showing, and she keeps sending me ultrasound photos that I respond to with single-word texts. She's always trying to get me excited about being a big sister and asking if I want to help pick out baby names. I stay polite but distant and throw myself into my summer job at the coffee shop downtown. Jasmine and Ariel and I hang out almost every day because we all know we're about to scatter to different colleges and won't see each other as much. We go to the lake, have movie marathons, and stay up late talking about what college will be like. Neither of them brings up Wyatt unless I do first, which I appreciate because sometimes I need a break from thinking about the whole situation. One Friday night in July, we all end up at the same party at someone's lake house. I'm sitting on the dock with Ariel when Wyatt comes over and asks if we can talk privately. We end up walking down the beach away from everyone, and after a couple drinks, we finally have the honest conversation we've been avoiding all summer. He tells me he thinks about me constantly and wishes our parents hadn't ruined everything. He says he keeps wondering what would have happened if we'd actually gotten to date over the summer like we planned. I admit I feel exactly the same way, and that I still think about prom night before everything fell apart. We both end up crying a little sitting there in the sand because it's not fair that we found each other at completely the wrong time. He tells me he's never felt the way he felt about me with anyone else, and I tell him I know because I feel it too. That conversation ends up feeling like closure in a strange way, because we're both finally saying out loud what we've been thinking for months. We agree that we need to try being friendly at family events, but keep our distance at state so we can both move on. He says maybe in a few years when everything isn't so fresh and weird, we can actually be real friends. I tell him that sounds good, even though part of me knows it's probably not realistic. We walk back to the party and go our separate ways, and I leave with Jasmine shortly after. It's not the ending either of us wanted, but it's the only realistic option we have right now. 2 weeks before move-in, my dad helps me start packing boxes in my room. He sits on my bed while I sort through clothes and books, and tells me he's really proud of how mature I've been through this whole nightmare. He says my mom made terrible choices, but he hopes eventually I can find some kind of relationship with her. I tell him I'm working on it in therapy, but it's going to take a long time, and she needs to respect my boundaries instead of pushing. He nods and says that's fair, and that I should focus on college and my own life, instead of trying to fix things with my mom right now. 5 days before I leave for state, my mom texts asking to take me to lunch, just the two of us. I agree to meet her at this sandwich place near her house. When I get there, she's already sitting at a table looking nervous. We order food, and then she tells me she wants to apologize for how she handled the prom announcement. She admits it was selfish and cruel to do it that way in front of everyone. She says she got caught up in her own happiness and didn't think about how it would affect me or consider my feelings at all. She's crying while she talks, and I can tell she actually means it this time. It's not enough to fix everything that happened, but it's the first real apology she's given me. I tell her I appreciate the apology, but rebuilding trust is going to take a lot of time, and she needs to stop pushing me to play happy family with her and Wyatt's dad. She agrees to give me more space and says she hopes we can work toward a better relationship slowly. She asks if she can text me sometimes, and I say yes, but that I might not always respond right away. It's not perfect, but it feels like maybe eventually we can find some kind of peace. When we leave the restaurant, she tries to hug me, and I let her even though it feels awkward. Move-in day arrives, and my dad and brother both take off work to help me. We load up the car with all my boxes and bags and drive 2 hours to state. My dorm is in a building on the east side of campus, and I know from Wyatt's text that he's in a building on the west side near all the engineering stuff. My roommate is already there when we arrive, and she seems really nice. Her name is something I don't catch at first because I'm too busy looking around the tiny room. She has no idea about my complicated family situation, and that feels like the freshest start possible. My dad and brother help me unpack and set up my side of the room. When they finally leave, my dad hugs me tight and tells me to call anytime. I watch them drive away and then turn back to my new room thinking that maybe college will be the place where I can finally figure out who I am without all the family drama. Orientation week starts the next day, and I throw myself into every activity they offer. I go to the campus tour, the club fair, the meet and greet sessions, and every single information session about pre-med requirements. On the third day, I'm walking across the main quad when I spot Wyatt near the engineering building talking to a group of guys who must be other engineering students. Our eyes meet for a second, and we both raise our hands in a small wave. He doesn't walk over, and neither do I. We just acknowledge each other and keep moving in opposite directions. It hurts way less than I thought it would because my brain is too full of new information about classes and campus resources to dwell on what we lost. That night, Jasmine video calls me like she has every night since I got here. I tell her about all the sessions I went to and the people I met in my dorm. She asks if I've seen Wyatt, and I tell her about the wave across the quad. She says that sounds healthy and mature, which makes me laugh because nothing about this situation feels normal. But I also tell her I think I'm going to be okay here at State. The campus is huge, and I'm meeting so many new people and starting to feel excited about my classes. My roommate is studying biology too, and we've already planned out our study schedule for the semester. Classes start, and I get completely absorbed in the work. My chemistry professor is intense and assigns reading that takes hours to get through. My biology lab meets twice a week, and we're already doing dissections. My calculus class is way harder than high school, and I have to go to the office hours just to keep up. 3 weeks into the semester, I'm at the library on a Friday night working through problem sets when someone sits down across from me. I look up, and it's Wyatt with his own stack of engineering textbooks. He asks if this seat is taken, and I shake my head. We work in silence for about 20 minutes before he closes his book and asks if I want to grab coffee from the campus cafe. I agree because it feels easier than making it weird by saying no. We walk to the cafe and order drinks and find a table in the corner. He tells me about his engineering classes and how the workload is insane. I tell him about my chemistry professor, who seems to think we have no other classes. We talk about campus life and which dining halls have the best food and which buildings are impossible to find. For an hour, we're just two people who used to know each other catching up on college experiences. It's surprisingly easy to talk about normal things without the weight of our family situation crushing every word. When we finish our coffees and pack up to leave, he walks me back toward my dorm. At the split where he needs to go left toward his building, he stops and looks at me. He says I seem happy and it's good to see me doing well here. I realize as I walk back to my room that I actually am starting to feel okay. Not perfect or healed or over everything that happened, but genuinely okay with where I am right now. The next week, my mom texts me a series of ultrasound photos. The baby looks like a blob with tiny arms and legs. She adds about 10 heart emojis and says she's so excited for me to meet my little sister. I stare at my phone for a few minutes, trying to figure out how I feel. I'm not ready to be super involved in this pregnancy or pretend I'm thrilled about having a half-sibling from my mom's affair. But I'm also not as angry as I was a few months ago when she first announced she was pregnant. I text back a simple congrats and leave it at that. She responds asking when I'm coming home for a visit, and I tell her I'm focused on the school right now. My therapist's voice echoes in my head saying, healing isn't linear, and it's okay to have good days and bad days with family stuff. This feels like a medium day where I can acknowledge the baby exists without pretending everything is fine. I joined the pre-med club after seeing a flyer in the biology building. The first meeting is packed with ambitious students all talking about their plans for medical school. I meet a girl who wants to be a surgeon and a guy who's interested in research. Nobody knows anything about my prom disaster or my complicated family situation. They just know me as someone who's serious about getting into medical school and studying hard. It feels amazing to be defined by my goals and interests rather than by what my mom did. I start hanging out with the pre-med group between classes, and we form study sessions for our shared courses. I'm actually enjoying my classes even though they're difficult. Organic chemistry is kicking my butt, but I love the challenge of figuring out molecular structures. My biology lab partner and I have gotten really good at working together on experiments. I'm starting to see a future that isn't completely overshadowed by family drama. Over the next few weeks, Wyatt and I develop a pattern of texting occasionally about random campus stuff. He sends me a photo of the terrible food in his dining hall. I send him a meme about engineering students never sleeping. Every couple of weeks, we meet up for coffee at the campus cafe and talk about classes and campus life. It's not what either of us imagined back in calculus class when we were flirting and planning our future together. But it works for where we are now. We can even talk about our parents' marriage without it being completely devastating. He mentions that his dad and my mom are redecorating their house, and I don't feel the urge to scream or cry. That feels like real progress. Thanksgiving break arrives faster than I expected. I pack a bag and drive home with a weird mix of emotions. I have dinner with my dad the night I get back, and he's doing better than I expected. He's been going to therapy and says he's working on moving forward with his life. The next day, I drive to my mom's house for a separate dinner. I sit in the car for 5 minutes before going inside trying to prepare myself. My mom answers the door with a huge pregnant belly and pulls me into a hug. Wyatt's dad is in the kitchen cooking and gives me an awkward wave. Wyatt is sitting on the couch, and we exchange a look that says we're both finding this incredibly weird. My mom brings out my baby half-sister, who's now 4 months old and actually kind of cute. She has dark hair and keeps grabbing at my mom's necklace. My mom asks if I want to hold her, and I say okay. The baby is warm and wiggly in my arms and makes little cooing sounds. Wyatt comes over and asks if he can hold her next. We take turns passing the baby back and forth while our parents watch like this is some beautiful family moment. It's surreal, but not as terrible as I feared it would be. The baby is innocent in all this mess our parents created. Dinner is awkward but manageable, and I leave after a couple hours feeling emotionally exhausted but not destroyed. Back at State for spring semester, I'm thriving in ways I didn't expect. My classes are challenging, but I'm maintaining good grades. I joined an intramural volleyball team and made friends outside of the pre-med crowd. I started dating someone from my chemistry class named Tyler, who's pre-med too. He's smart and funny and has no connection to my complicated family history. When I tell Wyatt about Tyler during one of our coffee meetups, he seems genuinely happy for me. He mentions he's been seeing someone too, a girl from his engineering program. We're both moving forward with our lives in healthy ways. It feels good to talk about our relationships without the weight of what could have been between us. My mom and I have regular phone calls now where we actually talk about real things. She tells me about the baby's sleep schedule and asks about my classes. I tell her about my research project and the pre-med club. She's learning to respect my boundaries when I say I can't visit or I need space. I'm learning to forgive her, even though what she did still hurts. My therapist says I'm doing important work in maintaining the relationship while protecting my emotional health. Some days I'm angry at my mom all over again. Other days I can have a normal conversation with her about nothing important. Both things can be true at the same time. At the end of freshman year, Wyatt texts asking if I want to grab coffee one last time before summer break. We meet at our usual spot and order our usual drinks. We end up talking for 2 hours about how far we've both come since that horrible prom night. He says he's glad we found a way to be in each other's lives, even if it's completely different from we planned. I tell him I agree, and that I'm grateful we can be friends despite everything. We talk about our summer plans and promise to stay in touch. When we hug goodbye, it feels like we're both acknowledging that we survived something that could have destroyed us. Summer before sophomore year, I'm working as a research assistant in a medical lab at the university. I'm learning techniques I won't see in classes for another year, and loving every minute of it. I see my mom regularly, and we're building a new relationship that's honest about the past, but focused on moving forward. My half-sister is almost a year old now and actually pretty adorable. She recognizes me when I visit and reaches her arms out for me to pick her up. I'm surprised by how much I enjoy being a big sister, even though the circumstances that created this relationship are complicated. I take her to the park and read her board books, and feel this weird protective love for her that I didn't expect. My dad is dating someone new and seems genuinely happy. My brother comes home from his graduate program for a weekend, and we all have dinner together. Life isn't perfect or simple, but it's becoming something I can live with. A few weeks later, my dad mentions over breakfast that he's been seeing someone he met at work, and wants me to meet her eventually. I tell him I'd like that, and I mean it because he seems lighter somehow, like he's not carrying around all that hurt anymore. He takes me out for coffee one afternoon and tells me about her, how she makes him laugh and how they've been taking things slow. Watching him smile while he talks about her helps me let go of some of the anger I've been holding on to about what my mom did to our family. Before we leave, he reaches across the table and squeezes my hand. He tells me he's proud of the mature and caring person I'm becoming despite everything I've been through. I text Wyatt later that week asking if he wants to grab lunch, and we meet at our usual coffee shop. We talk about our summer jobs and our classes for next semester, and it feels easy and normal. He tells me about his girlfriend and shows me pictures from their hiking trip last weekend. I tell him about Tyler and how we're planning to do long distance when I go back to State. We joke about how weird our family situation is, and how we should write a book about it someday. His girlfriend is really nice when I finally meet her at a family barbecue my mom insists on throwing in July. Tyler comes with me, and he and Wyatt end up talking about basketball for 20 minutes while I help my mom with the baby. The whole afternoon is surprisingly okay, and when Wyatt and I catch each other's eye across the yard, we both smile because we've somehow made this weird situation work. I start packing for sophomore year in August and realize I'm actually excited about going back to state. I'm not worried about running into Wyatt anymore or feeling awkward when I see him on campus. We've both built our own lives and our own friend groups and our own relationships. I'm taking organic chemistry and joining a research lab, and I already have plans to meet up with friends from last year. My mom and I talk on the phone while I pack, and she asks about my classes and tells me about the baby's new tricks. I'm learning to have a relationship with her that's honest about what happened, but focused on moving forward. She's learning to respect my boundaries when I tell her I need space or I can't visit. It's not perfect, but it's something I can live with. When I think about everything that happened since that horrible prom night, I can honestly say I survived something that felt impossible at the time. My relationship with Wyatt turned into something different from we planned, but it's still meaningful, and I'm grateful we found a way to stay in each other's lives. I'm learning to forgive my mom while still protecting myself and maintaining the boundaries I need to feel safe. My dad is building a new life, and so am I. I'm studying what I love and making friends and dating someone who makes me happy. Prom night was absolutely the worst night of my life, and what my mom did was selfish and cruel, and I'll probably always carry some hurt from it. But it didn't define my entire life or destroy my future, and that feels like the best possible outcome I could have hoped for. I'm going back to state next week, and I'm ready for whatever comes next.